I would like to welcome all of you to a webinar sponsored by the International Association of Academicians for Peace, titled A Paradigm for the Future Sciences, Pursuing Universal Science. I'm Chol Hee-han, professor at Sorbonne University, and I'll be a moderator for session 1. Now we begin this webinar with opening remarks by Honorable Dr. Sung-bae Jin, the president of Hyojeong Academic Foundation. Let's welcome President Jin.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first International Academic Conference titled A Paradigm for the Future Science, Pursuing the Universal Science, organized together by Hyojeong Academic Foundation, the International Association of Academicians for Peace, and distinguished representative of Russian Academy of Natural Sciences. The way this online conference is being conducted simultaneously in 100 countries during the COVID-19 pandemic is harbinger of things to come, a sign of these times. In virtually every field, we now behold a division of camps into two reigning ideologies, the spiritualists and the materialists. This we see in the fine arts, in global politics, in the hard sciences, in school education, and even in family counseling. In many ways, the prevailing paradigms in science and society have now come to a head, mushroom out and showing signs of decline. Science, which once began as philosophy, affirming transcendental reality with Plato, has gone the long course from Renaissance to our prosperous modern era, founded on the material paradigm, confident that we no longer need any spiritual williams to conquer the universe. Upon the stage entered the founders of Unification Movement, Reverend Sun Myung-moon, peacemaker, and Dr. Hak Ja-han-moon, renowned as Mother of Peace, who have initiated revolution to restore God-centered moral and family values, as well as overcoming the prevailing materialist paradigm that threatens the ruin of our global family and the biospheres. Here, present with us are eminent delegates from the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, the first of whom will be Dr. Shipov, founder of Theory of the Physical Vacuum. Like ourselves, he and his colleagues have navigated through untold tribulations. Presenting views and angles, a new paradigm science will likewise be scholars in various fields from Japan and Korea, the United States and France, primarily in physics and philosophy. The torsion field theory, by many names, reveals the subtle realms underlying physical reality. We observe perplexing holographic connections in quantum mechanics, and the phenomenon of the hard problem of conscience likewise connects us in organic collective whole. The scientists here have taken the bull by the horns, challenging Goliath with his immense arms and his powerful machinery to establish superluminal connections across time and space, and moreover, to present a unifying theory that finally resolved Albert Einstein's vaunted quest in a surprisingly simple way. I bid you to listen, deeply consider, contemplate, and discuss the ramification of a future science paradigm that holds every promise of headlining a new age, not only in abstruse science, but in every field of human endeavor. Thank you for your thoughtful attendance at the Joint Academic Conference of IAAP and the Russian Academy of Natural Science. Greetings to our colleagues around the world. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jin. And I have an announcement to make for those who are here. 한국 분들 경우는 그 리시버의 채널 1을 선택하시면 한국어 방송에 나오고요. 그다음에 영어는 영어 트랜슬레이션은 현장에 마이크로 나오기 때문에 그걸 참조해 주시기 바랍니다. As you can see, we have a lot to cover in about 2 hours. So without further ado, let me open the first session. The first session is about pursuing universal science. And we have 4 distinguished speakers with very interesting topics. Let me introduce to you the first speaker in our program. Our first speaker is Dr. Gennady Shipov, a member of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, and the title of his presentation is Quantum Mechanics, Dreamed of by Albert Einstein. Dr. Shipov, please.
Thank you. Thank you. And some words about basic principles of quantum mechanics. More precisely say that quantum electrodynamics, because quantum mechanics appear as a generalization of classical electrodynamics. And first of all, Planck-Einstein relations. And then Bohr quantization rule, quantization of angular momentum and energy. This formula follows from experiments in electrodynamics. And we also have constructive part of theory. French physicist Louis de Broglie introduced in 1923 wave function. Wave function, you can see here, this is ordinary wave, the solution of wave equations, but using this relation Planck-Einstein, we can represent the ordinary wave like the Broglie wave, like this. And the Schrödinger equation in 1926, which contain U, this is potential energy, or electromagnetic field, or gravitational field. And using this equation, we can solve this equation and find the density of probability and the observed values we can calculate using this formula, simple expression, the equations of modern quantum mechanics. more simply, that the equation, for example, of general theory of relativity, all these principles follows from the equation of new quantum theory. Oh yes, I forgot to say about wave particle dualism. This is analytical representation, wave particle dualism. This is wave packet. Here is delta function of Dirac, and they equal to each other. And this is analytical description of wave particle dualism. Heisenberg and certainly relation. It's also we can find in classical physics when we studied the liquid drop. We use phase space, where is coordinates and momentum. We have in this theory also like this, but without H. All this principle follows from the equation of quantum theory. And I should like to say about quantum ether of Wien Madelung. After 2 weeks, when was made publication of Schrödinger equation in the same journal, in the same mathematical journal, Wien Madelung published the equation, this equation, which follows from the Schrödinger equation. This equation have a view of hydrodynamical equations. This is continuous equation for the density of probability. This is equation of motion or Euler equation. Euler equation contain U, this is potential energy of electromagnetic or gravitational field. And now we have this term in the equation of motion. This term, we call the quantum potential energy Q, that is not in the Schrödinger equation. Surprise. Equation of Schrödinger equation not contain this potential energy. This is potential energy belong to the vacuum energy. And in the new theory, this potential energy is a centrifugal the potential energy of the centrifugal force of inertia, and have such expression. Here on the figure, it's I show that negative energy, potential energy of Q, and negative potential energy, for example, in theory gravitation of Newton. And common point, they curves have one common point, and this energy where Q is equal to U and E, the orbit is stationary if the condition U is equal to is met. This is we identify on this level stationary orbit of electron, for example, an atom which was introduced by Bohr. No need to introduce principle of Bohr. We have we received this condition theoretically. The Madelung procedure means conversion to an accelerating frame of reference because this potential energy exists. Schrödinger equation described in inertial frame of reference, but Madelung procedure in accelerated frame of reference. Here I represent equations of motion, equations of the new quantum theory. First of all, nonlinear spinor Heisenberg equations with cubic nonlinearity on the spinors O and I, and fully geometrized Einstein-Spinor equations, and fully geometrized spinor equation with the SL2C gauge spinor group of internal symmetries. And the main result of new theory that the quantum field theory is the dynamics of the field of inertia, new fundamental fields. The field of inertia, described mathematically by this quality T, so-called torsion of the geometry. The density of matter in the new quantum theory represented by this formula, and it means that all density of matter depend on the torsion. All density of matter, any kind of matter, depend on the torsion, or in physical name, depend on the field of inertia. Determination mass or charge follow from this formula like this and look like this. We can, if we have any solution of new quantum theory, we can calculate the density of matter, and we can calculate mass of through this density and charge, and from this formula follow the generalized Einstein formula E is equal mc squared, but m is dependent on the torsion field or on the angular velocity inside of mass. If we change inside of mass and angular velocity, rotation of elements from which m consists, we can control the mass. This is new, very, very important formula. Formula for calculating a value observed in the experiment look like this. If we know density of matter, we can use this formula and calculate average meaning of value observed in the experiment. Very simple. Conclusions. The unified field theory at the present stage of development is represented by the theory of physical vacuum. The theory of physical vacuum describes three fundamental physical fields with the same equations: the gravitational, electromagnetic, and inertial fields. The field of inertia is the basis of the quantum theory that Einstein dreamed of, and the wave function psi of the new quantum theory is defined through the field of inertia. You see, field of inertia, this is the wave function of quantum mechanics. It's very interesting result, and I think that many physicists all over the world must discuss this problem because it is very, very important for physics. Relax to time to relax. Gennady generalized my formula. This is my teacher. And formula m depended on angular velocity of elements of mass inside of mass. Thank you for your attention. And forgive me for not so good my English and not so good technical equipment. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shipov, for your wonderful presentation. We experienced some technical difficulties in the beginning of the session, and I apologize to you. Our next speaker is Dr. Richard Lewis, a former editor of Unification News, and the title of his presentation is, How Could an Insubstantial Creator Make Substantial Matter? Dr. Lewis, please.
Sorry, I didn't unmute. I'll be honored to be sharing with you at this IAP conference. I'll be covering a lot of ground rather quickly in the time allotted, so I've placed my email address on each slide if you wish to contact me with comments or questions. My topic is the apparent conundrum of an insubstantial God creating a world of substantial matter. This question only bothers those who do not believe in magic, such as scientists and the academics of unification thought. Unification of thought considers the cosmos to contain three great realms. One, the insubstantial realm where God, mathematics, natural law, the logos, the wave function of modern physics, and the mind reside. Two, the substantial physical realm that is the object of scientific study and today's topic. Three, the spiritual realm that we will leave for another conference. The astounding scientific advances into the details of fundamental physics have revealed a remarkable simplicity, along with an unexplained numerological enthusiasm for the number 3. Ignoring gravity for reasons to be mentioned, there are 3 types of fermions, the pixels of matter, and 3 types of bosons, the pixels of force. There are 3 quantum forces, 3 colors of quarks, and 3 generations of fermions. This numerology is a mystery in contemporary science. We will consider an explanation for this triplet obsession by looking at the nature of space-time. To the classical mind, space and time are simple nothingnnesses to be inhabited by matter. To the contrary, in modern science, the unified construct of space-time is a real, albeit an insubstantial entity that was generated during the inflationary phase of the Big Bang. Space-time has a set of distinct properties. It can be curved. It has a distinct tendency to transform briefly into fundamental particles of force and matter. It has 4 complex components, 1 of time, 3 of space. In this discussion, we will show how the triplet obsession of the fundamental physics is intimately related to the existence of just 3 spatial components. The mathematics of complex numbers used in Einstein's special relativity is not all that complicated. While the familiar numbers lie on a line, the complex numbers lie on a plane with 2 components. The horizontal real axis contains all the regular numbers based on the units plus and minus 1. The units of the vertical imaginary axis are based on the units plus and minus I. This I is the mathematical operator that rotates the entire real axis by 90 degrees, while the operator I squared rotates by 180 degrees, turning plus 1 into minus 1. The reason why I is often called the square root of minus 1. The difference between time and space remains in relativity. The temporal component is the real axis, plus and minus 1 being very different, just as is moving forward and backward in time. The spatial components are imaginary axes. Plus and minus I are as similar as clockwise and anti-clockwise, just as are up and down, backward and forward. Note that in the early days, these assignments were reversed. In space-time, a single second along the time axis is equivalent to 186,000 miles along the space component. So in special relativity, all entities in the physical realm move at light speed through space-time, albeit along different components. A photon, for example, travels exclusively along the spatial component at light speed, while we humans travel at light speed almost exclusively along the time component, except when moving at very high speeds through space, such as time going slower for a cosmonaut speeding about the Earth. That everything moves at light speed through space-time is why everything experiences the effect of gravity. Einstein's general relativity revealed how mass-energy curves space-time. If we were stationary in space-time, we would not sense gravity at all, just as a car in a traffic jam is quite indifferent to how curved the road is. Speeding along the curve, however, is quite different. A centrifugal force attempts to force us off the road, and the centripetal force of the tires keeps us on course. Gravity wants us to fall to the center of the Earth. It is the resisting force of the floor that prevents this. Gravity is a result of global curves in space-time, which is why we ignored it earlier, as it is unique. All the other fundamentals of matter and force, as we shall describe, are a result of local twists and deformations in the spatial components along the temporal component of space-time. In modern science, all things have an internal wave aspect and an external particle aspect, both of which have two types of local deformation. First, the internal wave. The internal is always expressed as its square in the external. The square of a wave's amplitude is its energy, which is always positive. The internal standing wave aspect has two basic types, one akin to a sine wave, the other akin to a cosine wave with complementary properties. The sine wave is asymmetrical and closed. It has zero energy at a node at its boundaries and center. The cosine wave is symmetrical and open. It has maximum energy at its boundaries and center. The external aspect is called a particle, as if it were a tiny solid. In this view, however, the external is a twist about the time axis in spacetime that also comes in two varieties. A half twist of 180 degrees of a spatial component about the time axis creates a non-oriented component. A familiar example is the Moebius strip, where a two-sided strip becomes single-sided. A single translation about the strip turns a state upside down. It takes two trips to return to the starting state. This is called a spin-half state. A full twist of 360 degrees about the time axis creates an oriented space that does not alter components. A single translation about it returns to the starting state. This is called a spin-one state. The combination of an internal open wave and an external oriented twist is called a boson. These are the pixels of force that are readily created and destroyed given the right conditions. As an aside, the putative graviton would be a boson with spin 2, but it is not needed in this view. The Higgs is also a boson with spin 0, and is space-time in an untwisted excited state, and we will not discuss it further. One oriented twist in a spatial component is called a Z-weak boson, or woson. It has an open wave and an energetic boundary. This abrupt transition at the boundary is very stressful to spacetime and highly energetic, giving the Z boson a rest mass of 93 billion electron volts. This excessive energy makes it highly unstable, and it rapidly decays into simpler entities. However, some of this excessive Z boson energy can be reduced by generating an electron or positron and resonating with it. This results in a positive W or negative W boson with an electric charge and an energy of only 81 billion electron volts. Oriented twist in open waves in two spatial component is called a photon. This avoids the energy of a standing open wave by shifting the energy back and forth between the two waves and moving along the third untwisted component at the speed of light. All the energy is in the waviness, the frequency of the wave. This generates a pixel of action called a Planck's constant, the basic quality possessed by all photons from radio to gamma. Oriented twist with open waves in all three components is called a gluon. The energy of the open wave, as will be discussed, is the energetic component of hadrons and is a source of their rest mass. The combination of an internal asymmetrical closed wave and an external non-oriented twist in spacetime is called a fermion. These are the pixels of matter that are essentially eternal and can only be generated or destroyed in pairs of complementary twists. A non-oriented twist in a single spatial component is called a neutrino. The closed wave hardly stresses spacetime at all, and it has a tiny energy of approximately 1 electron volt. As will be discussed, the neutrino has a weak charge and can participate in the weak interaction, which has a very limited reach. Non-oriented twists in two spatial components, one labeled electric vector and the other magnetic spin, is called an electron. This is more stressful, and an electron has a rest mass energy of 500,000 electron volts. The electron has a weak charge and an electromagnetic charge and can participate in the weak interaction and the electromagnetic interaction, which is essentially infinite reach. Non-oriented twists in all three of the spatial components is called a quark. Non-oriented twists in all three spatial components, called spin, electric, and color, severely stresses spacetime and deforms it from a 3D rectangular form to a 2D hexagonal form with two deformed axes. This entity is called the quark. There are two ways to deform a rectangular form of 90 degrees into a planar hexagonal form of 60 degrees. This results in the two types of quark. The electric vector can be 60 degrees along the negative time, resulting in the positive 2/3 positron charge on a U quark, or 30 degrees along positive time as the negative 1/3 electron charge on a D quark. As any one of the three spatial components can be the undeformed color component, there are three chromodynamic colors called red, green, and blue, and in antimatter, anticolors, which could be called cyan, magenta, and yellow. Gluons carry a color and an anticolor. The deformed spacetime is hidden away by confining quarks into sets where the deformation is neutralized. The energy of an isolated quark would be infinite, which is impossible. So quarks are always in colorless sets called hadrons. A quark has a weak charge, an electromagnetic charge, and a chromodynamic color charge, which, like the quark, is severely confined. While current science calls the fermions elementary particles, they are actually all composite. Spacetime is constantly trying to undo the non-oriented twists, but can only throw off oriented twists that have no real energy but are virtual entities. Fermions interact with each other by coupling with these virtual bosons, subsystems from their structure. All types of fermions are surrounded by a halo of virtual bosons, which gives them all a weak charge. The borrowed energy of the boson is so much that even at light speed they cannot get far before the borrowed energy has to be returned before it amounts to a Planck constant. This is why fermions have to be extremely close for a weak coupling to occur. The electron also has a halo of virtual photons, which is its electromagnetic charge. These, being massless, have an unbounded range, and fermions can couple with them at a distance. The quark also has a halo of gluons, which is its color charge, and quarks couple strongly with the gluons in their very confined hexagonal spacetime. The deformation of spacetime by the quarks has to be hidden from the rectangular spacetime. Rectangular and hexagonal space cannot coexist together. The hexagonal has to be confined and hidden in colorless combinations. There are two basic combinations: 3 quarks with 3 colors, making colorless white, example protons and neutrons, a quark and an anti-quark with color and anticolor, making a colorless black, example the pions that couple the strong nuclear force. The coupling gluons are open waves with energetic boundaries. Their color and anticolored ends have an uncolored center, and quarks shake off all their color onto the gluon sphere that surrounds them and reside in the colorless center of the sphere. The energetic ends of the gluons are the surface of the composite. It is speckled with color and anticolor that appears colorless at a small distance. It is astonishing to think that 99.9% of our mass is in the open waves of gluons. While symmetrical bosons look the same twisted along the positive or the negative time component, asymmetrical fermions are very different. Fermions twisted along positive time are called matter particles. Fermions twisted along negative time are called antimatter particles. As mentioned, the internal is expressed externally as the square, which is always positive, so both matter and antimatter move in the same direction in external time. A neutrino has a left spin, an antineutrino has a right spin. An electron has a negative electric charge, an anti-electron, positron, has a positive charge. Quarks of RGB colors, antiquarks of CMYI colors. While spacetime readily generates electron-positron pairs, matter and antimatter in equal amounts, all of the negative charge that generated in the Big Bang ended up on electrons and d quarks, while all the equal amounts of positive charge ended up on u quarks. The lawful principle that accomplished this reorganization of matter and antimatter is not currently known. Finally, the fermions can be thought of as all constructed on the foundation of a neutrino, with extra twisted components added to it. The first twist can be in a single component, the electron neutrino, or in two components, the muon neutrino, or in all three components, the tau neutrino. Adding a second twist to an electron neutrino creates an electron. Adding a third is a u or d quark. Adding a second twist to a muon neutrino creates a muon. Adding a third is an s or c quark. Adding a second twist to a tau neutrino creates a tau. Adding a third is a t or b quark. These are the three generations of fermions, only the first being stable. In addition, of course, all the fermions have their antimatter counterparts. To conclude, space-time is insubstantial. Its twists and deformations are insubstantial mathematical operations. The electrons and quarks that matter is constructed of are all insubstantial. Neither electrons nor quarks are solids, but in their interactions appear the emergent property we call solid that comes from the logos, from natural law, a topic for another time. An emergent property of a system is one not possessed by its interacting subsystems. While a helium atom behaves like a solid sphere, like a billiard ball, none of its subsystems, the interacting quarks and electrons, the coupling photons and gluons, are solids. God is insubstantial.
Dr. Lewis, you have 2 minutes.
Yes. God is insubstantial, and the physical world of matter is made up of insubstantial entities. So being this similar, there's no problem of one causing the other. All the properties we associate with matter are actually insubstantial. The property of size is a consequence of electromagnetic exclusion. The property of mass is a consequence of open gluon waves. The solidity of matter is an emergent property from the logos, the extension of insubstantial natural law in unification thought. We conclude that there's no inherent contradiction with an insubstantial creator generating an insubstantial realm. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lewis. Our next speaker is Dr. Jin-choon Kim, Director of Cheonilguk Academic Foundation, and the title of his presentation is Theory of Matter Change and God Science. Dr. Kim? Dr. Kim, we cannot hear you.
Okay. Now I think we can hear you.
We can hear you. Okay, go ahead.
You may know the Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon, who is the co-founder of ICUS, together with Reverend Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon, said God is the first scientist, because God is the first cause, origin of everything, internally and externally. That's why you can understand God is the first scientist, and also God is the first preacher. part one of my presentation is the scientific revolution and God science. According to Thomas Kuhn's theory of scientific revolution, so I'd like to say three stages of scientific revolution. First stage is like a modern science centered on Einstein's relativity, special and general relativity, and quantum theory. There are so many physicists. They shift the paradigm shift from Newtonian mechanics and Maxwell's electrodynamics. And the second scientific revolution is a paradigm shift from modern science to new science. This new science, you may say, torsion theory or space energy or zero-point energy or quantum medicine, quantum biology, David Bohm, centered on David Bohm's quantum mechanics. From the second scientific revolution, still we need to go forward, the third scientific revolution, so-called God science. This is centered on God's creation, and all things should have a relationship with human beings. And also we should have the unity and harmony among God, human beings, and all things. And also we must consider the unity between science and religion, and also unity of spiritual and physical world, and for the sake of God providence. The first scientific revolution is just focus on all things, material perspectives. So in the material perspective, we have laws, natural laws, which explain very well in the unification thought. So energy, space-time, and matter, all those basic elements to describe the universe or existing world. So this first scientific revolution is more focused on special and general relativity, which has a relationship among energy, space-time, and matter. And the quantum mechanics or quantum field theory also more internal aspects to describe the energy, space-time, matter. The second revolution concerns the relationship between human beings and all things. First revolution, they don't consider the human being, and also they don't consider quantum information field of all things. But in the second scientific revolution, you should consider consciousness of human being as a subject. And also you must consider the quantum information field or quantum information waves of energy, space, time, matter. So that is the a different dimension from the first scientific revolution. And the third scientific revolution is more concerned the first cause, God. So in the third scientific revolution, centered on God, who is the first cause of visible things or invisible things, and also first cause of human being and the first cause of all things, including energy, space, time, matter. So in the third scientific revolution, we should consider all those four entities, God, human beings, all things, and as a conclusion or union, we should consider the ideal world. So those four entities are so crucial in the third scientific revolution, of course, based on the first cause, God. So simply speaking, God science is science in view of God or by God. So science in view of the purpose of creation and in view of the laws of creation. And also science, God science is the science for the sake of God or for God. So science should prove the existence of God and God's creation, even the ideal of God's creation. So that is the role or mission of God science. I'd like to say around five some features of God science. So all things God science is about all things. So all things is created by God, the first cause. This is the starting point of God science. Secondly, all things are objects of human beings, not separate from human beings, close interrelationship with human beings. That is a little different from ordinary materialistic science. And also number three, God science should have the unity among God, human being, and all things. Actually, Dr. Reverend Son Myung-moon emphasized so many times the harmony among those God, human being, and all things. And also, the God science should have unity of religion and science. Religion is more search for internal truth. And science, natural science is more search for the external truth. So should it be harmonized because the internal truth and external truth both came from one first cause, same origin. So should have unity. And the spirit world and the physical world also came from one origin. So that's why in the ideal world, we should have unity. So the God science are searching for the unity of spirit world and the physical world. To research God science, we may think two ways. One is deductive approach, another one is inductive approach. Deductive approach is somehow I'd like to quote Dr. Shipov's the theory of physical vacuums. In his book, he mentions seven reality. So first reality is God, complete void, emptiness. And second reality is primary vacuum, like a spirit world. So he told me that corresponds to spirit world. And the third reality is physical vacuum. This is somehow the 0-point energy, or in this level, you can find the theory of everything, TOE. And from physical vacuum, we have fourth reality, like elemental particles. And the fifth, like mineral, a gas, and also liquid and solid. So through those fourth, fifth, sixth, and the seventh reality, actually, we have all the world, the physical world. So that means there's a starting point is first reality, God, first cause. I think this is a very good idea to unify all theories or field or forces. Another one is inductive approach from the basic classical physics and quantum physics and relativity and the quantum field theory to the quantum gravity and the grand unified theory and theory of everything like string theories. But that is the end of somehow conventional quantum field theory. So we should go forward, spirit world, and eventually we should arrive the first cause, God. So this is the direction toward the God science. Second part is so how to understand the matter change in God science. So in my presentation, I'd like to say 4 stages. Stage 1 is cognition of original consciousness, first cause. Second stage is formation of human consciousness. Third stage is formation of consciousness field, like a fusion of consciousness plus 0-point energy. And the fourth stage is matter change from the consciousness field. In this process, the first stage, we need to understand the theology, philosophy, and the theory of cognition. And the second stage, we need psychology, neurology, quantum mechanics, and quantum biology, quantum medicine. And for a third stage, we need David Bohm's quantum mechanics and quantum medicine, general relativity and modern cosmology, zero-point energy, and the torsion theory. And the fourth stage, we need David Bohm's quantum mechanics and the chemistry, molecular biology, and the quantum biology and the torsion theory. So by combining all those together, somehow we understand the matter change. The first stage is cognition of original consciousness. So for that, we actually get very detailed procedure, but in this case, not easy to explain. But basic theory is cognition and resonance of original consciousness between spirit mind of human being, human mind, and the God, the first cause, original consciousness. And the second stage is formation of the unit of mind and body from the unity of spirit mind and the physical mind. So this for somehow the first part of stage 2. So first we need to have unity between spirit mind and the physical mind. Centering on that, we need the harmony between mind and the body, like a spirit mind, physical mind, and spirit body and physical body like that. That is the unity of mind and the body to change the matter, For this, we need neurology to understand the relationship between consciousness and the brain. And also we need to understand the David Bohm's quantum physics, the quantum information field of cerebrum or brain like that. And third stage is formation of consciousness field together with zero-point energy. So this combination of human consciousness and the zero-point energy or zero-point field. So zero-point energy already, many physicists already they mentioned. For example, Max Planck, Nobel laureate, he suggests 1911 the zero-point energy. David Bohm also quantum potential 1952, Einstein 1917 like cosmological constant. The space energy, free energy or dark energy, torsion field, physical vacuum, all related to zero-point energy of the universe. So human consciousness should have a combination with zero-point energy. And to form the consciousness field. So this consciousness field can be stored in the information chip, like a GPS information chip or Sorogen information chip. So in the chip, there are consciousness field there. So this will act at the molecular level or cell change or tissue change or organ change or individual changes. So by the same procedure, we also try to resolve the problems or environmental problems like wastewater or earth environment, drinking water, agriculture, waste, trash, health, food, natural resources. This is some data which we got January of this year by using the gas science technology, like a GPS technology. So iron and aluminum and the bacillus turbidity and the zinc and mangan. So before GPS treatment, for example, iron 0.06, but after treatment, non-detected. And also aluminum 0.03 to non-detected. And the bacillus 5,800 to 1,200. And turbidity 59.37 to 18.90. So zinc 0.004 to 0.002. And the mangan also changed. So we see the change from detected to non-detected, and 79% decrease, 68% decrease, 50% decrease, or 47% decrease. I have more data, but today, because of short time, just I introduce this part. And another one is like a Sorogen technology. So there also we have we got data. from the Korea Research Institute.
Dr. Kim, 1 minute to go.
Yeah. So this is my final slide. So through those experiments, so we can see the validity of the theory of meta change in 5 stages. So we continuously collecting many official data by using these procedures or mechanisms or theories. So far, somehow we got very positive result. So this is my last comment about the theory of the meta change in God science. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Our final speaker in session 1 is Dr. Shigehiro Suzuki, Chief Director of Sapporo Family Clinic and the Clinical Professor of School of Medicine, Kochi University. And the title of his presentation is Heavenly Parents, Holy Medical Science for Creating a New Environment. Dr. Suzuki. We cannot hear you, Dr. Suzuki. We see your view graphs on screen, but we cannot hear you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good.
I'm Shigehiro Suzuki. I'm a medical doctor in Japan. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone for giving me the opportunity to make a presentation at Hyojin Academic Foundation's IAP conference. I would like to talk about the theme of a future paradigm for science, pursuing universal science. Next one. Let's begin. First, I will present unification medical science as the new truth of medicine, and then I will talk about Heavenly Parents' holy medical science for creating a new environment, world peace from the viewpoint of mental health. What is unification medical science? The new truth of medicine. I don't have enough time to present, so I will skip sometimes. Please refer to my book, Unification Medical Science and Unification Psychology in detail. About total man, if this is put in another way and a medical viewpoint, the weak mind can be regarded as a mind affected by the negative implicit memory, which is the origin cause. It is thought that illness breaks out due to conflict of the original mind and the weak mind. Since medicine treats man who has mind and body, the pursuit from these both sides is indispensable to it. In order for man to attain the good purpose of the original mind's desire, there must come a time when there is a new expression of truth, enabling mankind to bring these two matters together under one unified theme. These two matters are religion and science. This new truth is just unification thought, and it is the unification medical science that systematized the medical aspects of it. Unification medical science is a medicine which restores indemnity in order to dissolve the human fall, and is based on the principle of the universe. In particular, the mission of the medicine based on the new truth must be what can help teaching and coaching absolute sects. However, this new ultimate final medicine cannot come either from my man's synthetic research or from any human brain. This truth must appear as a revelation from God himself. This new medical truth has already appeared, borrowing the expression of the general introduction of divine principle. With the fullness of time, God has sent his messenger to resolve the fundamental questions of love, life, lineage, and universe. His name is Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Unification thought is called Godism, which refers to the thought that has God, truth, and love as its nucleus, and also proposes heart or Shinjon, logos, and creativity as the most important divine natures. Accordingly, unification medical science must be the medicine of true love and true life and true lineage, originating in heart, logos, and creativity as divine natures of God. However, the fallen nature exists in human beings, and various symptoms which show self-centeredness, such as jealousy, hate, anger, and so on, are full of everyday life. It is by no means easy for these medicines to treat these symptoms resulting from their fallen nature. Consequently, unification medical science cures the spiritual and physical disease which occur due to the fallen nature, centering on psychosomatic medicine, which can be regarded as one of the cores of unification medical science. And it treats illnesses as a dimension of resolving the conflicts between East and West through the Oriental and Western cultural harmony. In particular, the approach to the aspect of spirituality seems to be the most important because our first responsibility is to resemble God in the divine natures to become God's children. Therefore, unification medical science must be established and developed as a dimension of resolving the conflicts of the heart, which occur due to the fallen nature and completing our spiritualities. By the way, today, with the new coronavirus pandemic, we are faced with anxiety that we have never experienced in human history. It is anxiety about the eternal life of the soul. In a material civilization and prioritized the body over the mind, it seems that a self-centered, selfish virus of the mind, in other words, negative emotional movements common to all humankind that exist in the collective unconscious of humankind, created the new coronavirus. Next one, two, what the corona pandemic means. This corona pandemic is just the beginning of the end of material civilization. It goes without saying that this is a turning point in human history. The era of seeking the symbol of affluence from things is over. And from now on, we have entered the era of heart, where spiritual affluence is required in the connection between people. Therefore, in addition to measures against disease based on the latest scientific evidence to protect human health, creation of a new environment for a peaceful world is desired. 3, the key to world peace. Then, what is the key to solution for world peace? What I feel particularly strongly these days is that everyone in the world, without exception, raised in the mother's womb and born from the mother's abdomen. Mothers are great for all human beings. A mother gives birth and wishes her child happiness. This is an unchanging truth that does not change at any time, no matter how the times change. Now is the time to gather the wisdom of humankind and create a new environment including areas such as medical care, long-term care, welfare, and education. In particular, it is a mother who gives birth to a person, and it is a father who supports the mother. The power of parents who unite mothers and fathers supports the family, and the entire family, including children, is reborn by parents, so that society, nation, and the world are reborn, and a new era will be created. The medicine that arises, establishes, and settles them is exactly Heavenly Parents' holy medical science for creating a new environment, which depends on unification medicine. For Heavenly Parents' holy medical science, world peace begins at family. It is the most important to realize that everything started with the heart or syndrome of Heavenly Parent. In other words, the emotional impulse to seek joy through love. This is the just origin of medical science. Then, how can the truly peaceful and healthy world be realized from this origin? Firstly, the goal of family completion must be clear. Secondly, the true standard as a model must be needed. It goes without saying that if there is an ideal family, the center of the family is the parents of an ideal couple. In particular, the figure of a mother who actually gives birth and raises a child with sacrificial love is exactly the figure that gives birth to humankind. Then, what is the true standard of a model as a mother for humankind? If you call the model Mother of Peace, the way to get there must have been the steepest and toughest road for women in human history. Thirdly, I will talk about the true value of being a mother of peace. Women have the nature that men do not have, that is, to reborn the environment as a mother, since the mother of peace must have a standard that can solve all the hardship of human suffering and human history in order to reborn humankind. She obviously has to overcome a spectacular life and cannot reach it without going on the path of sacrifice of love. In other words, the mother of peace is the very life itself that has overcome the hardship and survived life and death by the inspiration of heavenly guidance, even if it faces poverty and starvation. This is because the other name for Mother of Peace is called sacrifice. She is a single daughter whose heaven has been prepared. The president, Hakja Han-moon, who is called a purple rose of Shalom, a Mugunfa in Korean name, Mother of Peace. The appearance of the parents of true peace is a trembling soul. It is a result of sweat and tear, a heavenly victory. Particularly, the Mother of Peace is the ideal woman to reborn you from the ground up. I have talked so far, but it's finally over. You who are listening to this story can be said to be the one who was guided by the heaven and chosen. Have you noticed yet? The true only one way that makes you happy and deepens your happiness is that it can be reborn by the Mother of Peace. Finally, I will talk about, as conclusion, towards the true medicine of Heavenly Parents' holy medical science. Humankind is standing at the historical turning point. The development of new technologies has brought remarkable progress to modern medicine, particularly in the dramatic outcomes to treatments for infectious disease and patients with serious disease. And there is no denying that modern medicine has notably improved the conditions in which humans live. However, on this earth and even in the spiritual world, we are facing an age where countless numbers of people have begun accomplishing the metaphysical transformation. This is an age that
Well, I think there's little technical difficulties over in Japan, so we have to stop here. And I'd like to thank Dr. Suzuki for his presentation. I would like to thank all 4 speakers in the session 1 for their wonderful presentation. Now that the session 1 is over, President Sarova will take over the session 2.
So thank you. We will move directly into session 2. Greetings to all participants in this conference. My name is Dr. Thomas Sellover, and I will be your MC for session 2. Our distinguished speakers on this panel will bring us to the far corners of the universe and back, all within 15 minutes for each. So hang on to your chairs and let's begin. Our first speaker from the United States is Dr. Menas Kafatos. Dr. Kafatos joins us from LA as the Fletcher Jones Endowed Chair Professor of Computational Physics at Chapman University. He is a founding board member of the Academy for the Advancement of Post-Materialist Sciences, a member of the Korean Academy of Science and Technology, a member also of the Romanian Academy of Science. He has co-authored books with Deepak Chopra, Robert Nadeau, and Mikhail Batanov-Gaukhman. Dr. Kafatos is a recipient of many honors and has chaired and spoken at the International Conference for the Unity of Sciences. Let us welcome Dr. Kafatos for his presentation entitled Of 3 Universal Natural Laws and of 8+1 Symphonies of Life, Harmony in the Cosmos, Harmony in Living. Dr. Kafatos, the floor is yours.
And let me go back to the video.
Yes.
So as we move into this talk, I would like to actually show something that perhaps can give us some of the ideas that we have been talking about in terms of these universal laws that we are talking about. So let me see, where is the thing?
We're living in difficult times and maybe asking fundamental questions about life. What is the universe? What is Earth? Who are we? Some concepts from science and philosophy can help. 3 natural laws apply to everyday life and everything around us. Complementarity expresses that opposites create pairs, and there's unity in diversity. Universality explains that the same laws apply everywhere, so from here we learn about there. Interactivity tells us that everything is a process in which both things and beings interact. These universal laws are linked to 3 components of the human mind. Complementarity becomes intent. Universality becomes knowledge. Interactivity becomes action. 3 fundamental questions follow. Where am I going? What is my purpose? Who am I? We can answer these by taking 9 symphonies or steps to improve our everyday lives. Expect the unexpected. Pay attention to little things. Know that we only see results after specific facts have occurred. Put your mind and ego on hold. Take life one step at a time. Then things will move faster and we can do more and more. Remember your mortality. Know that hard times advance us the most. Be. These are the 8 symphonies of the cosmic dance. They express the cosmic actions of creation, maintenance, and reabsorption, and move us from concealment to revelation. The 9th step is to be consciously aware of our own living presence. These concepts from science and philosophy show us how to find fulfillment and happiness. They can help us to gain new habits and perspectives and see beyond the fear of our times, even COVID-19. They can also lead us to a new way of being and living, so that maybe, just maybe, a greater reality will emerge.
Before, you get results as if an observer made a choice, and collapses are called collapsive wave function. So I would say that in our view, the collapse of the wave function is a specific case when an observer is involved, akin or similar, if you like, to special theory of relativity and general theory of relativity, where in fact you can have a process take place even if the observer or if the person who set up the experiment takes himself or herself out of the picture. So these are the summary of these 3 laws: complementarity. The second one is recursion. And we have to look at them as working all 3 of them together. So if you like, there is unity in trinity, or from the 1 you get 3. And we find these relationships of 3 so prevalent that it's actually uncanny in some ways. So the second law, or the second principle, if you say, it's not a law like the law of gravity, but it is even more general, is what patterns do we see in one part of the universe seem to happen everywhere. And actually, you would not be able to do science if that was not the case. Imagine if you had a universe where you do something here and far away, if you do the same thing, something completely different happens. We don't believe that's the case. We scientists believe there's a universality. There is a common universality that applies at different levels, not necessarily the same exact appearances, not the same. For example, this humble shell of a sea creature doesn't look the same thing as Archimedes spiral, but it does have similar properties. So you find these mathematical structures that seem to propagate or exist at different levels. As here, so elsewhere, as above, so below, as heaven, as in heaven, as on earth. And finally, the third one is the creative interactivity. Everything is a flow. Of course, it's very obvious that this is true in quantum theory, but it's also true in theory of relativity. And it's also true, of course, in the general theory of relativity, where the flow has to do with relationships and interactions. And usually in physics, we talk about relational interactions between particles, but actually human beings, we have relationships and interact with each other and with nature. And this perhaps brings forward some of these wonderful things that the previous speakers were talking about, where we have perhaps a universal way of looking at things that are based on generalized and foundational principles that operate at every level. So it's not, if you like, we're not just physical beings, we are mental beings, we're biological beings for sure. And it would be sort of unnatural to think that these laws apply to us as a mental being, but they don't apply to us as a physical being, or vice versa. So they are quite universal. So as you saw in that short video, I usually show the video at the end, but I wanted to show the beginning so you get the idea. So you see, because it's a short message, I wanted to give to the audience. Complementarity.
So you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Complementarity is essentially if you like, the desire to know something, the desire to make a decision. Do I go out today or don't I go out? That's the intent. The second is universality. Well, you can't have knowledge unless you have universal principles that you can understand. This is actually the foundation of science, and it's also the foundation of religion. You couldn't have a religion or spiritual path if you didn't have some basic knowledge, whatever that set of knowledge is. And the third one, of course, is interactivity or action. That is a little bit more obvious to see. If you want to do something, you have to know how to do it. For example, if you want to drive a car, well, first of all, you have to decide to drive a car. Second thing is you have to know how to drive a car. If you don't know how to drive a car, you're going to be in serious trouble. And then finally, you decide to drive a car and go somewhere. So this is the last slide. And these are the 8+1, what I call 8+1 laws of living harmoniously. Actually, they are, I call them symphonies because they're symphonies of life. They derive, if you like, from the 3 fundamental laws I showed before. The first one is fairly obvious, expect the unexpected. It's very much on the quantum level, but it's also true in everyday life. I would say that the COVID-19 whole situation was, in a way, unexpected, or maybe it was expected, but certainly not the way it happened. The second one has to do with pay attention to the little things in life. We humans, particular scientists, we want to solve the big picture, but it's actually the little things that matter in life. And from the little things, you perhaps see the results afterwards, after the specific facts have occurred. We as operating minds of ego, or having an ego with operating minds, we would like to know the results now. What is happening? Why did this happen? Mommy, why this and this, why or that? This is actually, the fourth says, wait, the answers will be shown, but not necessarily now. One step at a time. This is a very much quantum or quantum-like. Even a bird that flies does not fly continuously. It flaps the wings, or if you run, even if you're running very fast, it's one step at a time. Things then will start moving faster and faster. This actually one is very subtle, but if you follow these everyday laws or everyday symphonies, you will start seeing that you can do a lot more things. And this is actually the experience that many of us have in this COVID-19, that we are so busy now. And it's not just because of Zoom, but we really can do a lot more things because we don't travel necessarily as much as we used to, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be a definite difference between what we had before COVID-19 and what we have now. Maybe Mother Nature, in a way, is giving us this pause or putting a break because we're running too fast all over the place.
About 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Remember our own mortality. Everybody eventually passes away. Everybody is born. Everybody passes away. And it is the big fear that we have as human beings. But in fact, if we live mindfully every moment of our life, maybe this life will be so full that mortality or fear of death will not take a place. And of course, that is very much part of all religious traditions. And number 8 is actually very hard because it looks that sometimes we learn the hard way. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but perhaps this is part of the ego mind way of looking at the universe, that maybe some of the hard lessons, and I'm not advocating hard lessons, I'm advocating conscious awareness, but perhaps we human beings learn the hard way. Last but not least, and I'll finish here, is the Ninth Symphony. I like it because I like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And that basically says, be, we are. You actually don't need the 8 steps because by being, you actually have all of these 8 symphonies. But the 9th one is the awareness of our own existence. Kamsahamnida, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kafatos, for giving us a beautiful, cosmic, and practical symphony amid this harmonious cosmos in which you've located us. Thank you very much. We'd like to move to our next speaker now, who is Mr. Didier Guignard. Mr. Guignard joins us from France and is the founder and president of the Club Science Paris, organizing regular meetings on a monthly basis, inviting high-level scientists as well as university students for presentations and debate about fundamental questions of science and philosophy. Mr. Guignard himself has given more than 12 of these sessions, including such topics as the anthropic principle, Big Bang and energy, Gödel theorem, mind and brain, science and philosophy. His presentation is entitled New Pathways into the Future of Science and the Related Challenges. So please, Mr. Guignard.
Okay, thank you. First, a short plan. Spirituality is a controversial issue in science, but we need a scientific approach. The evolution of modern science shows us how chance became a new god and how new discoveries blurred the border between science and spirituality, leading science to a crossroad where seemingly opposite viewpoints could open new ways into the future. Connecting spirituality and science is still highly controversial in modern science. A few quotes of famous scientists illustrate how much their viewpoint can differ. Albert Einstein once said, "I want to know how God created this world." However, to Napoleon asking, "What about God?" the French scientist Pierre Laplace would have said, "I had no need of this hypothesis." In contrast, the famous Louis Pasteur declared, "A little science takes you away from God, a lot of science brings you back to God." Can it be fruitful for tomorrow's science to encompass spiritual and philosophical aspects? Let us find out. So far, modern science has largely excluded God. The scientific method is making hypotheses and checking with reality. Our hypothesis will be: 1. There is an origin to the universe. 2. This origin is a creator. 3. The universe has a purpose. For example, we still have no means of directly verifying the Big Bang. Yet, if the Big Bang did take place, there are consequences which we can verify. So far, everything fits. We will thus examine the explanatory power of considering spiritual aspects as well as a purpose compared with a materialist viewpoint. For a better understanding of such issues, let us consider the birth and development of modern science. Modern science was born with scientists like Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton. Then science began to fly on its own, detaching itself from philosophy and religion, creating its own validation criteria. Today's science is still based on the same pillars, one rational and the other experimental. Any scientific theory must be logical and consistent, but also confirmed by experience. It must be falsifiable. Until the 20th century, science and religion were seen as dealing with entirely different fields. Yet conflicts arose, like Galileo's problem with the papacy or controversies raised by Darwin theory. By the end of the 19th century, some scientists claimed that the main issues of science were solved. The rest was only details and got an unnecessary hypothesis. However, two great scientific revolutions, namely the theory of relativity and quantum physics, completely changed the picture and blurred the barrier between science and spirituality. This slide shows a situation starting from 17th century up to 19th century, where various fields of knowledge separated from the concepts of God and spirituality. Yet, today, a philosopher or theologian can no longer ignore the discoveries of science and their philosophical consequences. And in any field of activity, a scientist can no longer ignore spiritual and philosophical concepts. The physicist seeks what the origin of the universe is. The biologist reflects on the fundamental nature of life. The neuroscientist investigates whether the mind is a simple byproduct of the brain. The dilemma of science today. Modern science accepts the principle of objectivity of nature, also called methodological materialism. It states that nature is objective and not projective, excluding any finality. Science also upholds the principle of causality. Nothing happens without a reason, and causes precede the effects. Somehow it's similar what a previous lecturer spoke about this universality principle. Until Darwin, science was purely deterministic and the universe a perfect mechanism. Then chance started to appear in science. Darwin introduced the notion of chance with his theory of evolution, and statistical laws appeared in the new science of thermodynamics. During the 20th century, a new form of randomness appeared with quantum physics. With a growing share of chance, science has the difficulty of becoming less predictive. Once the so-called God of the gaps was often used for things that reason couldn't explain. With the progress of science, it is now replaced by a new God named chance. But there are two kinds of chances. Quantum chance, which is well defined scientifically and usually generates a small degree of indeterminism on our scale, and coincidence. They gave birth to this God named chance, supposed to be at the origin of the Big Bang and of the evolution. Why? Because according to the principle of objectivity of nature, what is not the fruit of pure necessity can only result from chance. It cannot be due to intention or finality. At least some scientists believe so. But the development of the universe with the appearance and evolution of life and humanity supposes an improbable avalanche of chance. Moreover, because the law of increasing entropy implies increasing average disorder, it makes the appearance of structures like ours even more unlikely, if not part of a pre-established plan. The thermodynamics of the universe. The second principle of thermodynamics states that in all interactions, some of the energy is dissipated as a heat. The energy of an isolated system tends to turn into a disorderly bustle measured by entropy. Thus, our universe should move towards increasing disorder and stable equilibrium. Yet, the opposite is happening. The evolution of the universe is moving towards complexity and a structured organization through unstable equilibria. Also, if the universe is an isolated system, at the time of the Big Bang, the entropy of the universe was 0 or very low. Conclusion: at the time of the Big Bang, there is a great deal of orderly energy. It may explain Einstein saying the most incomprehensible thing about the world is that it is comprehensible. Moreover,
you have about 5 minutes, sir.
Our universe seems to have a very fine tuning. The astrophysicist Ching-choon estimated that the probability it could have been produced by chance was 1 among 10 power 60. Therefore, as the progress of computer science and mathematics, the God named chance may not survive. As an alternative, some scientists suggest the possibility of a multiverse, but this is quite difficult to verify. If the probability of our universe with this parameter to appear by chance was very small, this is even truer for the appearance of life and human beings. Neuroscience is exploring the fantastic abilities of our brain. It is hard to believe that it can only be the result of chance and natural selection. Evolution is a reality, but it cannot be explained by Darwin's theory alone. The universe has a purpose and evolves following a blueprint. Isn't it another god of the gaps to assume the universe follows a plan? Not necessarily, provided we look for and add to it a scientific explanation of the mechanisms that, starting from a creator, lead us to today's world. These mechanisms might even lead us to a better understanding of the nature of the creator. This will require efforts of science, but religion also. We need a new paradigm, including the spiritual and scientific side in its explanation. This is how new pathways could open a bright future for science. Science at a crossroad. Which challenges is science likely to face tomorrow? The quarrel over being and becoming is as old as philosophy. Parmenides emphasized the being. Whatever is, and what is not cannot be. Heraclitus emphasized becoming. No man ever steps in the same river twice. Until the 19th centuries, classic physics, being rather deterministic and conservative, was on Parmenides' side. But nowadays, scientists are placing more emphasis on indeterminism, randomness, relativity, and incompleteness. Here is a table with some of the representative of the old and new paradigm. In my view, the world in which we live is a subtle mixture of these two options, which can be complementary and not opposed. The conservative option is found in particular in gravitation, that keeps us as well as the water of the ocean of the air firmly on the ground of Earth. By definition, gravity is vertical, and we can enlarge this idea to the concept of order and hierarchy in various relationships, such as parent-child relationship or that of mind and body. On the other hand, electromagnetism provides a large part of the dynamics and evolution of things. We can talk about horizontal or Yang-yin type of relationship that will allow creativity and diversity. The subtle balance between these two types of interaction has made our universe what it is today, with the appearance of stars, planets, life, and human beings. Here is a table of examples of vertical concepts and their horizontal counterparts. This tree is symbolic, the vertical direction and stable trunk, and moving branches more horizontal and changing to the season. Another avenue that science should develop is the equally subtle balance between determinism and indeterminism. I see it as a possible source of our free will. Quantum physics shows that there is indeterminism at the microscopic level, but it has generally few effects at the macroscopic level. The Nobel Prize, Sir John Eccles, envisioned that this indeterminism makes possible the action of our self on our brain. The way he describes this action has yet to be proven, but the basic idea is right, I believe. Indeed, if the laws of the physical world that apply to our physical body were entirely deterministic, we would only be machines with no autonomy. But if our body and our environment were not subject to any law and behaved in a completely chaotic way, we would have no possibility of control. This balance between determinism and indeterminism allows also a creator to act without violating the laws of nature. Ways into the future. To conclude, I would like to mention other issues on which science will surely progress in this century, bringing together general relativity and quantum physics. Understanding what Didier Guignard called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in natural sciences. Understanding the essence of life. In his book, The Self and Its Brain, Sir John Eccles wrote, materialist solutions fail to account for our experience uniqueness. Let me bring a final point. Today, based on the so-called principle of the objectivity of nature, science rejects the notion of finality. A physicist may not bother, But for a biologist and even more for a neuroscientist, it might become problematic. I believe that science will sooner or later have to abandon this premise and also include spirituality, tackling issues like near-death experiences, mind-brain relationship, placebo effects, hypnosis, water memory, and so on. Let us conclude with some humor. In the end, it's all a matter of balance. I'll let you see the drawing. To keep the presentation short, I had to oversimplify a few concepts, but I hope you won't hold it against me and that I was clear enough. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Guignard. Thank you for your holding the time as well. Our next speaker is Dr. Valentin Chebanov, who is the head of a large agricultural industrial firm in Stavropol and a member of the Russian Space Society. His theory is deeply philosophical, connecting physics and cosmology to human consciousness and social structure. He loves to read science fiction and is an advocate of humankind's venture out into the far reaches. His presentation is on new humanism and evolution paradigm based on energy, logos, and information. Let's welcome Dr. Chebanov.
I wish all participants health and good cheer. Thanks and greetings to the organizers and my personal regards to Dr. Jin. The source of growth and development for human beings and the universe, our planet, is beset by frightening violence, earthquakes, and not only, but even from the beginning of history. And the cruel plague is spreading like a wildfire. We're assailed by ecological, financial, and health catastrophes. These touch all aspects of life: social, cultural, political, moral, ideological. The institutes of capitalism, democracy, medicine, etc. are overburdened. At the same time, we have the absolute invariants to fall back upon, which are substantial and unchanging, yet non-physical. These are the same original form which the material world emerged from. From this, we have a basis for firm ethics for any situation dealing with physical reality. There is a form of matter which also constitutes consciousness. The physicists and philosophers deny this. The cascade of the cosmos generates this from the mathematical and metric principles. There is another realm of physical reality they don't know about. The human requirement for give and take, mutual connection, matter, and consciousness. Now we see many unexplained facts in physics. We start with the smallest particles, including invisible dark matter and dark energy, on the quantum leaps and non-locality. Philosophy and religion come from the artificial dialectics and trialectics. There have been quarrels over the Holy Trinity for the past 2,000 years. There is an irreconcilable schism between good and evil presented to human beings. This situation causes many ill effects on the human beings. We know about the observer effect in quantum mechanics. Cosmology talks about the coefficient of energy production, insisting on the law of conservation of energy. Then, how can we explain the energy of the Big Bang and the accelerating expansion of the universe? We have come to the stage where we must create the new philosophy and science to handle such observations. We conclude that information lies at the basis of everything. First of all, there are substantial and insubstantial entities, a vacuum, a matter corresponding to consciousness. Next, there are periodical stages of matter, like the periodical table of elements. There is the soft, subtle, gentle phase and the universe evolution, like the second God, and energetics forms for all existing beings, and the software for the expansion of the cosmos. This is the unified information field. We are just beginning to figure out its structure and parameters and the method by which it affects all entities in the universe. The information field preserves the integrity of existing beings and their order and facilitates their development, collective unity and conduct behavior. We may take an example of this interaction between the information field and real objects, the microgravity discovered by cosmonauts, the collective consciousness of human beings, and how it somehow affects our behavior. This system helps protect us from disasters and like. When our body loses consciousness, it forms the astral body, and this manner preserves our existence as human. We give birth to culture, science, philosophy, and even people. One of the disputes among people today is over the system of economic relations, including financial transactions and the core family itself. The standard productive forces determines the basic economic relations, and the economic relations form government system. Thus, the social structure is formed, and the type of household is the counting systems we see. The main obstacles to spiritual contact among people preventing moral initiative is the chaos and confusion in human society and among nations. Also, there is a main obstacle. The hardest to overcome is personal conflicts between people. People behave unconsciously, do mafia speculations, jealousy, deceit, fraud, unfaithfulness, corruption, etc. Science, conscience, righteousness, faithfulness, love for God. At this present time, we must be uplifted by our society in every way possible. We need to emphasize this in all areas: marketing, culture, religion, law. This is the critical moment. The judicial system is departing from the time-honored system of stable justice. We must reform and straighten out such disorder and unlawfulness in our social and government system. To tolerate immorality and chaos in the society is to break away from the cosmic system of rightful order. The great humanist Albert Schweitzer confirmed this principle: without establishing and confirming the foundation of a legal society, without constructing a righteous system of justice, and chaotic and moral anarchy will come about. Then there will be a series of struggles varying from the position of a leader of the culture and society. It is only natural that will happen. How can one avoid a rift from the people of the West? What's going on in the wholesale theft and misuse of people's contributions and efforts? This leads to breakdown in society, the collapse of mutual relations with China, and so on. The deep contribution of philosophy is in concentrating the knowledge of the natural sciences. Philosophy identifies the absolute invariance in this and systematizes the entirety of all our endeavors. Therefore, the foremost task of philosophy is to guide the fundamental components of our society to maintain ecological and economic lawfulness and the criteria of truth. Jesus said, "Know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Surely he was holding the pillars of philosophy. The creative thoughts of people's brains are the subject of the philosophy of cognition, but we need a new philosophy, epistemology, theory of cognition. This is up to the task. Our subjective thought seeks order and lawfulness in the objective world. This express in our mind, spirit, and ego. Then, with a righteous mind, we can also make true statements about the world. The basis of philosophical conversion lies in understanding the foundations of the physical world and so on. Then we have dialectics, trialectics, polylectics, then govern economic and other interactions on all levels. These help us find the source of all the order and laws in the society and humanity, the unified global communication network, and the purpose of the order of the whole universe. matter, the body, all nature are still dominated by force and violence, and their natural functions are also distorted because of the low level of human consciousness. Nikola Tesla said, in the cosmos there exist several nuclei which we obtain knowledge, power, and inspiration. I cannot identify what those centers are, but I know that they exist. Not only do they lubricate our systems of cognition, but also they give us the mood and inspiration to keep seeking in our quest, and our mental faculties to rely upon these in our give and take with one another and with the objective world. They preserve our health, our development, and our integrity, he said. These constitute an important fixture in the cosmos. They assist us in a rational faculty, help provide for good connections with one another, and aid us in fulfilling our tasks, supporting existing beings, supply the world of information, maintain integrity and resonance of the whole system of things. These connect the first, second realms of space, our physical vacuum, for example, between the mental realm and the quantum realm.
Sir, you have 5 minutes, please.
There is a matrix between our physical body and layers of our spiritual mental body. There is a process of reflection between the mental faculties of the brain and the physical substance. There is a pyramid structure to our relationship with the natural world and with the society. These include the 12 systems of the somatic nervous system connecting to all the organs of our body. The future of mankind does not lie in artificial intelligence. The true future of humankind is in becoming a particle of the cosmic reason. I start by creating myself, then I grow, become old, then we cross over into the cosmic realm. This not only enables people to attain divinity, moreover, it enables us to become owners and leaders adequate to the tasks of developing and expanding. We become models of spiritual morality and maturity. It means cultivating our ability to communicate with others. But wrong ideas for solving problems keep coming up and creating new problems and stunning people's growth. With right information, we can manage material people and consciousness property. With the help of our 5 senses, sight, sound, smell, touch, and balance, we perceive physical information. In addition, we possess 6 other information channels: brain, heart, cell matrices, and information fields. First, 2-dimensional fields: time, temporal, mathematical, logical, analytical, deductive. Second, 3-dimensional: spatial, shape, imagination, intuitive, artistic, musical, and emotional. Third, 4-dimensional: subconscious, intuitive, flexible, instinctual, and operative. Fourth, superconscious, intuitive, reflexive, creative, and paranormal. Fifth, interrational, fantasy, unity with the whole, merging in love. Finally, 6, autotrophic, oral, information processing, information field, orientation to cosmic space. Our path in life is to constantly, maximally open up these channels. In the beginning, these are closed. Then we have to preserve the woven together completion that each of us has achieved. Our goal is to make contact with all these information fields, to achieve complete cosmic reincarnation with the minimal loss of energy and spiritual growth at an increasing rate. Then to make our transition to the state of optimal unity with the highest level of informational autotropism. Based on the experience with almost 500 Maori subjects, it has become clear that the interaction of spiritual mind and conscious mind develops only on the foundation of social relationship. And the same goes for the whole. This is as Paul Rawlings holds, that children are originally cruel, selfish. Only by living in relation to the whole community and society do we gain the elements of our spirit, soul, and body to develop by coming out of oneself and relating to God. In this way, we cultivate a wholesome spirit and body. Eternity, based on this principle.
Thank you, Dr. Chebanov. I know you were not able to complete entirely your paper, but we learned a lot from what you were able to present. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce our next presentation by Dr. Mariya Podarovskaya, who has been raised since her college days under the guidance of Dr. Gennady Shipov as her mentor. She is truly a shining star who presently teaches quantum physics and mathematics at Moscow State University. She's been a chief organizer for a joint publication with this institution and gave a presentation at the Kintext World Summit 2020. Her presentation is on philosophical foundations of interpretations of quantum mechanics. Let's welcome her now.
Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you for the invitation to the conference. I'm glad to present my report for you today. The study of quantum non-locality is one of the main scientific trends in the present time. The Aharonov-Bohm effect, the Brown-Twiss effect, and the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox are phenomena in which the quantum non-locality manifests itself. At the beginning of the 20th century, two of the most important theories were born: the quantum theory of matter and the theory of general relativity. The main element of non-relativistic quantum theory is the wave function, or the vector state of a quantum particle, the physical meaning of which, from the very beginning of the formation of the foundations of quantum mechanics, caused serious questions and controversy in the scientific community. At the beginning of the formation of quantum mechanics, the mathematical apparatus of the theory was developed. The question of the physical meaning of the developed model for describing the microworld raised only after the construction of the mathematical basis. As a result of a complex discussion at the Solvay Congress, the Copenhagen interpretation of the quantum mechanics was adopted, according to which the wave function should describe a fictitious wave of probability without having the ability to be measured in the experiment. The main consequence of interpretation that until a particle begins to interact with a classical object, it can't have definite space-time characteristics and is simultaneously in all states in which its wave function is non-zero. The describing of interactions between particles in terms of long-range and short-range interactions, which exist in the context of classical concepts of a localized particle, loses its meaning when describing quantum phenomena. One of the most interesting consequences of the quantum mechanical description is the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox, which was first formulated in 1935. According to the Einstein, every element of physical reality should be reflected in the physical theory. This is the main criteria for a complete description of the physical reality based on the constructed theory. If a researcher can predict a value of a physical quantity with a probability equal to unity without any disturbance of the system, then there is an element of physical reality corresponding to a given physical quantity. The consequence of the reasoning of scientists was the proof that the description of a physical system and the language of the wave function of quantum mechanics is not complete. The ideal experiment consisted in measuring the physical parameters of the object, of the microworld, in an indirect way. In the experiment, the system of two particles whose state is described by a single wave function separated over long distances was investigated. Measurements carried out on one particle determined the state of the second particle. Also, there was a large distance between them in space. After the articles of Einstein and co-authors, the paradox underwent a hard analysis. Niels Bohr, with colleagues from Copenhagen School, believed that two particles were not localized in space before measurement and were simultaneously present everywhere. An attempt was made to interpret non-locality based on the fact that the wave function describes more than one particle, but an ensemble of particles and correlations between particles are of a statistical nature. But even with this approach, quantum mechanics can't be a complete theory, since the theory must describe the real state of every individual particle. Another solution of the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox was proposed by Russian scientist Alexander Fock, who put forward this about the existence of non-force interaction of quantum particles. The idea that separated particles in the experiment stop to interact is not correct. Since the wave function describes a system of two particles, this may reflect the fact that there is a non-force connection between them. But in this case, the wave function ceases to be just a mathematical symbol and acquires a physical meaning. Our hypothesis is that the wave function should be compared with a real physical entity, underlying instantaneous long-range action, which is not forceful. The main task is to build a theory that can physical reality. We assume that such a theory could be the theory of physical vacuum. According to the main ideas of the theory, the existence and manifestation of matter is based on a substance called the physical vacuum. Matter emerges from the vacuum and goes into it. The forms of existence of the matter are a manifestation of the states of vibrations of the vacuum. According to the theory, the physical vacuum can be considered as a geometric manifold. It was predicted that the wave of quantum mechanics correspond to a real physical object, a field of torsion, which has a geometrical nature. Moreover, there must be elements of physical reality that were not taken into account in the basis of quantum theory. Such elements are the angular coordinates, which turn out to be built into the structure of the space-time continuum. The theory of physical vacuum is built on the basis of the geometry of absolute parallelism, which characterizes stratified space-time with a base formed by a set of translational coordinates and a layer specified at each point of the base space by the tetrad field. The torsion of the space is given by the special Ricci rotation coefficients related to the tetrad field by the relation, this relation. It is the angular coordinates that can be hidden parameters through which the non-force long-range action between the particles is carried out in the experimental proposed by Einstein. The torsion of the space determines the Riemannian curvature only in the case when the total Riemann-Cartan is equal to 0. This is only possible within the geometry of absolute parallelism. In this case, the torsion coefficients determine the geometrized energy momentum tensor, and as a result, the density of the matter.
5 minutes, please, Doctor.
Yes. Okay, thank you. The field of matter is formed by the twisting of the space of the geometry of absolute parallelism. And the quantum non-locality can be the effect of the field and is carried out through the angular coordinates. This is the angular coordinates. The fundamental result of this theorem as a consequence of the equations of physical vacuum. Firstly, the solution of the equations of the physical vacuum in the general case are purely field tensor and the current tensor. And secondly, in the special inertial frame of reference, the density of matter is expressed through the four-component wave function, which has a purely geometric nature and is generated by torsion of space of absolute parallelism geometry. And this wave function is mathematically interpreted as the reducible vector part of the torsion, and physically is a special torsion field. It is physical field, new physical field. So, and now I want to tell you about main conclusions of this theory. This interpretation of phenomena of quantum non-locality opens up great opportunities for us. First of all, this is the study of new physical fields, their generation and detection, the creation of super-sensitive sensors and the conduct of pure experiments opens up a new scientific direction for the scientific community of the world in the study of the properties, the application in problems of communications, medicine, and biotechnology, and other important areas. A wave function represents a real physical field, which has a geometrical nature. It is the new field of torsion. The existence of special empty waves is predicted that propagate in space, or rather a part of space, a torsion field, and don't transfer energy, but only information about the state of the particle that this wave accompanied. When passing through material environment, empty waves receive information about the state of the particle of this environment. And empty waves can affect a material particle through the influence on the phase of the wave associated with it. So, thank you for the attention. Thank you.
Very, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Podarovskaya, for inviting us to understand the workings of reality from the bottom up. Very, very wonderfully done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then our closing presentation will be by Dr. Mikhail Batanov-Gaukhman, who is professor at Moscow Aviation Institute, National Research University, in Aircraft, Rocket Engines, and Power Plants Research Institute. While exploring the mathematical significance of structures in physics, he also applies his theories to the esoterics of Hebrew as a scriptural language. Let's listen to his presentation on algorithms for disclosing the four-letter name of God and algebra of signatures. Dr. Batanov.
Dear colleagues, your attention is invited to the report, Creation from Nothing, Fundamentals the Algebra of Signature. Torah and I Ching and others ancient religions source claim that God created the world from the void. Therefore, the algebra of signatures is aimed at studying the vacuum on the basis of the algorithms of reliving the great name of God, Yud K Vav K, another name, Tetragrammaton. The algorithms of reliving the great name of God, Yud K Vav K, this is transliteration of these letters, taken from the Luwian Kabbalah, can be found on the author's websites alsigna.ru and metaphysics.ru. It is proposed to investigate the vacuum by probing it with beams of light. This is mutually perpendicular beams of light, this one and this one, like this. At point O, there are 16 tree bases, 8 internal tree bases like shown here, and 8 external tree bases shown here. This posit this. In a vacuum, only mutual posit movements are possible. Therefore, internal tree bases rotate in one direction, then adjacent external tree bases rotate in the opposite direction, shown here. If all 16 tree bases are added along one corresponding time axis, associated with the direction of their rotation, then the result is 16 four bases or tetrads. 16 four bases or tetrads shown on this slide. Orthogonal four bases associated with the gray Cartesian crucifixion of Sever. It's the Salvador Dali painting. If we assume that the fifth four bases, this one, has the all direction of the axis positive, that is, its basis has the signature plus, 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 plus. This four bases has signature plus, 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 plus. All direction is plus. Then when compared with the fifth basis, all others four bases will have the following signature. For example, compare bases 5 and bases 9. If it direction coincide or this direction coincide, we put plus. If direction not coincide, we put minus. Signature of these 9 bases is minus, plus, minus, plus. All results we get 16 signature. It's 16 bases, it's a signature of these 4 bases. These 16 signatures are combined into a antisymmetric signature matrix like this. This matrix has many interesting properties which are investigated in detail on the website metaphysics.ru. In the report, we will mention only some of these properties, which are connected by the philosophical views of various religions. Concerning of the philosophies of Judaism and Taoism, plus is Rei or in. Minus is letter Yud and or Yang in Chinese philosophy. In the signature matrix, there is 32 plus and 32 minus, together 64 things, like 64 hexagrams in the Chinese philosophy. There are 2 and 32 plus and minus 32 minus 0 equals 0. There are two sides of reality. The sum of signatures is equal to 0 signature. It's shown here. If we plus all 16 signature, it's equal 0 signature. The sum of things in each column and each row is 0. If we all things in this column equal 0 and all things in this row equal 0, like all the same. This is called split 0. This is vacuum properties. Signatures can be transferred from the numeration to denomination, from numerator to the denominator. For example, we show here, we see here. Here 7 and 7 signature together plus all the signature, it's equal, signature is plus minus minus, is the signature of Minkowski space. And here minus plus plus plus, it's a signature of the Minkowski antispace. It's a musical analogy. This one together is octave. It's like music of heaven. This is musical analogy, very interesting. The antipodal dyad 4 space and 4 antispace by Minkowski with signature plus minus minus and minus plus 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 also lead to triplets which are consistent with 3 grams I Ching. There are signature musical chords. This is the harmony of heaven. 4 binary combinations of things plus and minus are possible. For example, this to think it's equal to 1 letter, this one. Combination of these binary combinations of things from 16 values of stigmas. This one, it's combination 2 binary rows, column. It's together equal to 16 signatures. The signatures of the 2-row matrix from a matrix consisting of 16 signatures. In this one, it's power 2, it's equal this one. This is signature matrix can be represented as the sum of the diagonal and the anti-symmetric matrix. This matrix we can represent it like this. Connection with Jewish beliefs. In Judaism, the name of God, Yud K Vav K, relieves in the form of the tree of life, or tree of spheroids. The components of this matrix correspond to 10 spheroids of the Etz Chaim, it's a tree of life. This combination equal Keter, this combination Chokhmah, this Binah, 12 combination like this, it's Tiferet, and this combination Malchut. It's together tree of life. Matrix can be put into correspondence with a matrix of signature, like this. This is quality of the spheroids. Analogy with the chess philosophy of Hindu. The chessboard has 8 times 8, 64 cells, of which 32 are black and 32 are white. There are also 64 things in the signature matrix, of which 32 are plus and 32 are minus. At the beginning of the game, there are 32 chess pieces on the chessboard, 16 white and 16 black. Also, within the algebra of signatures, there are 16 signatures describing light and 16 signatures describing darkness. This is this one chess pieces. Hadamard matrix and anti-jamming codes. If we return the original unit to the raw signatures, then we obtain two row matrix. It's the equal. The Hadamard matrices are used to construct noise immune codes with the ability to correct errors. For example, according to following algorithm. This one. And the next Hadamard matrix is like this. If again, instead of 1 and -1, we use the signs plus and minus, then we obtain the rule of the raising to the Kronecker power of two row signatures. Genetic analogy. Genetic information is built on the basis of Hadamard matrix. DNA molecules are built from 4 chemical elements, nucleotides: adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. These 4 nucleotides correspond to bit of information like this. A it's 0, 0, or minus, minus, J is 1 and 0, or plus and minus, and like this. And from doublet, triplet, and other more complex combination of information polymer, DNA molecule. This algorithm, it's from Hadamard matrix. This is the code of language of all living. Solution of the Einstein vacuum equation for a 16 matrix like this, with signature this one, make it possible to obtain metric dynamic models of all elementary particles and quarks, and make up the standard model. And to describe all known fields, strong, weak, electromagnetic, and gravitational. All materials of the algebra of signature and fully geometrized physics can be found on the website alsigna.ru and metaphysics.ru. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Batanov. Thank you indeed to all of our panelists. You've taken us through the universe and back in 15 or so minutes each. For those of you who would like to discuss these presentations, there is a special opportunity of a Zoom discussion, which will begin at 7 p.m. Korea time or 12 noon Central European time. which is in about 45 minutes from now. So that's a special opportunity to discuss together. We thank Mr. Guignard for being willing to help set that up. Also, we would like to hope that we can have more frequent discussions of this nature, because we all need to be oriented in the universe much better than we are. So thank you all very much. Thank you for those of you who have been patiently listening and understanding together. This concludes the second session. Just a moment. Yeah, quickly.
Just say again that the link is on the chat.
Okay. The link for that is on the chat. So with respect to Dr. Jin Sang-bae, the organizer of this conference, and also to the Russian Academy, I want to thank all the participants and wish you a very blessed day. Thank you very much.